Jimmy's 6 hands are winning him prizes now, but he'll soon find out 6 hands can be a curse.
Jimmy Olsen transforms into things, a proud staple of the Silver Age. And of course Jimmy's own series, Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. Being Superman's pal doesn't just mean getting kidnapped or put into danger. No, if you're Jimmy, it also involves souvenirs, awkward gaslighting, and transformations galore. Some of which are circumstantial, many of which are of Jimmy's own making, or just through wacky shenanigans. When some creators go out there to mine the more out there moments of the Silver Age, if Jimmy is involved in the story, it's likely to come up, with some being referenced far more than others. You'll see Human Turtle Jimmy Olsen a fair bit, but what about Human Octopus Jimmy? With all that in mind, I thought it would be fun to go back and take a look at Jimmy Olsen's transformations. We have plenty of transformed Olsen to choose from here, and you'll all have to let me know which transformed Olsen is best Olsen, or your favorite. Some leave more of an impact than others.
Don't worry, I just need to trick him into saying his name backwards.
Without further preamble, because this is going to be a longer video, I'm Sash and this is Casually Comics, and this is Jimmy Olsen transforming into things. First up, the super brain of Jimmy Olsen. Coming to us from 1957 and Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen issue 22. A classic of any transformation genre that's flirting with sci-fi. And that's when you get super intelligence, you literally get a big head. And also most likely become a terrible person. This one is written by Master of Madness Otto Binder, with art by Kurt Swan and inks by Ray Burnley. This one gets to be the cover story. At this point you're getting multiple Olsen stories per comic. Jimmy's series ran from 1954 to 1974, and even when it ended, it was actually rolled into the anthology magazine Superman Family, and the numbering that they started from was Jimmy's. That's why it starts off with Superman Family 164. The point is, Jimmy had a good run. What sort of people will inhabit the Earth a million years from now? Will they be good or evil? Will their brains be so advanced that not even Superman with all his awesome power would be a match for them? These questions are about to be answered through the super brain of Jimmy Olsen.
I'm lugging all this desert sand to the South Pole, but why?
Because I ordered you to, Superman, and you cannot resist me. This transformation, like many you're about to witness on this list, is a result of Professor Potter. And this is actually his first appearance, his first time to show up and mess with Jimmy. He's always got some kind of serum or invention that's gonna upturn Jimmy's life. This time it's Z-rays that will transform the subject into a man from the future.
Wait a minute, this diagram says no teeth. Why no teeth?
Sit down, lad, and I'll demonstrate. I'll try it for laughs and write it up for our Crackpot Corner, which features Screwball's inventions that never worked.
I kind of want to read Crackpot Corner.
Of course it actually does work, and Jimmy is evolved, and the first thing he does is change his name to Cosmic Brain. This transformation of course means that Jimmy now uses a very verbose vocabulary, and also that he's a bit of a condescending jerk. And of course he has extrasensory perceptions now and some telekinetic abilities. And so Jimmy starts forcing Superman to do random things for him. You will now rip loose the weakest mountain on Earth from the Himalayas and dump it in the crater.
Whatever you say. First he has me dig a hole, now he wants me to fill it. Is he just trying to make a fool of me?
You know, based on how Silver Age Superman treats Jimmy, that would actually be pretty probable. But no, that's not what's going on. It's also known that these abilities are going to be temporary for Jimmy. So Jimmy won't always be able to shoot kryptonite beams out of his eyes at Superman, which he does. But still, this is not a good time for the Man of Steel. But it of course turns out that while Jimmy did seem to be a jerk, and in many ways he was for how he approached this, Jimmy's seemingly random tasks were to prevent future disaster on Earth by rebalancing it, because in the future it's going to become unbalanced and maybe explode. They needed it to be something big to counteract just how awful Jimmy was being, and also for the random things he was making Superman do. One can be smart and courteous, Jimmy. Ultimately the effects wear off, Jimmy's head shrinks back down, his hair grows back, I guess, and he forgets everything. His brain is now too tiny to recall that once he thought it was a great idea to rename himself Cosmic Brain. And Professor Potter can never do this again, because the rare metal he needed to power this machine, there's no more of it on Earth. You'd think he would have looked into that before he got started with this. So much for Cosmic Brain. But who needs a big-headed Jimmy when you can just have a giant Jimmy Olsen? The Human Skyscraper comes to us from issue 28 of Superman's Pal and the year 1958. We have the same creative team and they're back, transforming Jimmy once more. This one doesn't make the cover. That honor goes to the boy who killed Superman. Now Jimmy's transformation in this one is also Professor Potter's fault. Jimmy has a toothache and he's avoided going to the dentist. Instead he decides he's gonna go interview Professor Potter. I mean, why not get an interview with a local mad scientist? Maybe it's time for another run in the Crackpot Corner column. Professor Potter says he has a tooth toothache remedy, and Jimmy just takes it. Even though, as he is, the professor's talking about how he's also been treating some beans with radiation so that they'll grow like Jack and the Beanstalk. But you know he gave Jimmy a magic bean instead of the toothache cure. Despite that, Jimmy instantly feels better. Placebo. Now, on his way back, Jimmy crashes into the ocean with a helicopter. He took it so that he could get this great story. What a waste of resources. And when he wakes up, he's a giant and he's reenacting Gulliver's Travels. The local natives were also nice enough to make him some giant pants. But then a rock falls him and a yacht passes by and decides to exploit him for profit, as well as the natives that they take him from. And they take him back to Metropolis, where Superman recognizes him. But he has had a bump in the head, and that means not just amnesia, but also regression.
Pretty butterfly.
I think Jimmy has a very serious head injury.
I'll grab Jimmy's belt and fly him out of the city. Oh my gosh, Jimmy sees me now.
Me, cat's little doll.
Superman manages to distract Jimmy with a train or choo-choo for a bit, but that doesn't stop Jimmy from even more classic references like climbing a skyscraper like King Kong. But this is because he has to use the spire as a toothpick, because his tooth still hurts. It's the ache that started it all. So Superman manages to lure Jimmy with a giant sundae. Jimmy's love of ice cream is going to come up in a couple of these stories, actually. Then he knocks him out by having him play with a blimp that's full of dentist gas, and he bursts it, and he puts himself out. And so Superman's able to remove his tooth. And it turns out that the exact anesthetic is the antidote to Potter's growth radiation, because of course it is. This sounds like you ran out of panels, Superman. The next day, when Jimmy has shrunk back to his normal size.
Your boss put it up here on exhibit. I also found and repaired the flying newsroom, but you could avoid all this trouble, Jimmy, by going to the dentist for your regular checkup.
I know, Superman. From now on, I'll be smart and visit my dentist twice a year. Of course, it was a stealth go your dentist PSA. I hope Jimmy's getting a cut of what is probably the world's largest tooth attraction money. Well, one transformation that certainly worked out for Jimmy happened in issue 31. This also from the year 1958. The Elastic Lad, with dashes in between each letter for reasons. The word is stretching too. Same creative team, turning Jimmy into things. You've heard of Superman's other name, the Man of Steel. Well, meet the Boy of Rubber. Sounds like they should be in a movie together. And it's none other than your old friend Jimmy Olsen, who tops all his previous adventures with the most fantastic escapade of all. Yet Superman's young pal also meets heartbreak, and you will pity his pathetic plight when Jimmy becomes the Elastic Lad.
Great guns, that's something even I can't do. Stretched like rubber.
It's okay if people have different abilities than you, Superman. You have so many. Let him have this. This one is not Professor Potter's fault. This is one of those Superman just shouldn't leave anything around Jimmy in any capacity stories. Because he comes back from space with a mysterious leaden box, but he has no time to check it because disaster strikes and he has to fly off. So he just leaves it in the office with Jimmy. You know, instead of leaving it in the fortress or somewhere safer than with Jimmy, like on a street corner somewhere. Meanwhile, Jimmy is alarmed as he opens the strange chest. The contents all rusty junk except that bottle. Wait, it holds a green fluid that glows. Oh my gosh, if it's liquid kryptonite, it would be dangerous to Superman. In his haste to get rid of the dangerous bottle, well, I mean the bottle he assumes is dangerous. Yipes, I tripped! The bottle smashed and the stuff splashed all over me! Well, luckily kryptonite is harmless to everybody but Superman. Tell that to Lex Luthor. A few more tests quickly reveal the shocking truth. Holy cow, I can tie my arm into a knot. Instead of liquid kryptonite, it was some amazing serum that made my whole body elastic, like rubber. All parts of me stretch ridiculously. I'll be a laughingstock. I don't want my friends to see me this way, especially Superman. Here he comes. I'll dash out. When Mr. Fantastic gets these powers in 1961, he's not gonna be able to wait to show them off. He's gonna want everyone to see them. Humility doesn't get you your own building, Jimmy. Jimmy gets a job at a carnival as the Elastic Lad, and he's constantly trying to cure himself, but he ends up working for a criminal by accident.
But luckily an Elastic Lad like you can enter under the door.
Right, I'll stretch out thinner than a pancake and slip through. He figures it out when the crook tries to kill Superman, and he ends up helping him, and he's actually cured by kryptonite. Oh, the irony, for this all happened because he thought that he was getting rid of kryptonite in the first place. However, this would not be the end of Elastic Lad, far from it. Of all his transformations, this would be the one that was most revisited in the Silver Age and pre-Crisis in general. His return would be in issue 37 with almost the same creative team, but Stan K on inks for this one. This one is Professor Potter's fault. It has him showing up with a synthetic serum that turns Jimmy back into the Elastic Lad. And this time he's in his purple costume that would become the look for this version of Jimmy. This is one of those shenanigans stories, which just involves Jimmy getting into hijinks like being mistaken for an alien and trying to get Clark to take the stretch serum, or Elasta formula, and by the end of it, it wears off. But the Elasta formula would become a key way that he transformed back into Elastic Lad. And he would do so on other occasions, and even become an honorary member of the Legion of Superheroes. It was one of Jimmy's more recognized forms, and even post-Crisis they had him regain the ability in The Adventures of Superman 458, I Sing the Body Elastic. This from 1989, where he now gets his abilities because of a virus, and it is much more dramatic. It didn't last, but you will still see Elastic Lad referenced, but his heyday was definitely the Silver and Bronze Age. You'd see him in the background of other comics, there are statues of him with all the rest of the Legionnaires. He was just there, rounding things out. Now, one that's a bit less well remembered is his next transformation. This from issue 32, again in 1958. The Jimmy Olsen from Jupiter. This one is by Alan Schwartz. We're changing it up on the writer, but the art is still by Kurt Swan, and we still have Ray Burnley on inks.
Arrest him, officer. He's an alien creature from some other world who wants to conquer the Earth.
No, Superman, I'm your pal Jimmy Olsen. A scientist from the planet Jupiter has changed my body so that I look like a Jovian.
According to my X-ray vision, Jimmy has turned to a typical inhabitant of the planet Jupiter.
With my Jovian ability to read minds, I can tell that Clark is really Superman. Pals. Jimmy is at home watching TV when he's suddenly contacted by aliens. They want his help with an experiment. Now Jimmy decides, despite the fact that they're talking to him and addressing him by name, that this is some kind of elaborate prank. It's the actors. For some reason, they decided to just prank him personally. So he just goes along and follows their instructions for the experiment they want him to do. And it turns out what they were doing was turning him into a Jovian. It's like that Outer Limits episode where they transform Clancy Brown with the alien DNA, but it's less depressing. Or I guess that episode is like this story, but more depressing. We made you one of us to find out if our bodies can safely adapt to conditions on an uninhabited planet much like Earth. You will be our guinea pig. Very nice. And meantime, I'm supposed to go around like this? No one told you to do the experiment. You could have turned your TV off.
Also, Jimmy could have died if it turned out they were wrong and they couldn't survive on a planet like Earth.
But they tell Jimmy it's just for a week, don't worry about it, and also he has the ability to read minds. And he's a reporter. Think of all the ethics he can violate now. They don't pitch it like that, but that's sure how Jimmy's gonna use it. So Jimmy wraps himself up like a mummy so that he can go out and spend his day reading minds. Jovian Jimmy is busy mind reading again. Excuse me, but don't waste your money buying your girl those earrings, mister. She won't be satisfied with less than a pearl necklace. I wonder if that was also common slang back in the day. If so, I see you. Uh-oh, I seem like I walked right into Jeff Wacker, head of the bank holdup mob, wanted by police of 12 states. I just love that hearing that she wanted the pearl necklace made this guy think, great, now I've got to rob another bank. Now, because of these powers, Jimmy finds out that Clark is Superman. Because Clark's just sitting at his desk thinking, I am Superman. So how is Superman gonna get out of this one? By the mighty powers of super gaslighting. Not only will the Jovians not confirm whether what Jimmy has learned was true or not after the transformation wears off, but Superman then takes Jimmy to the movies, which are showing newsreels of Superman's accomplishments and exploits. And the Jovians grant Jimmy 10 more minutes of power so that he can read minds. And all the people coming out of the theater are fantasizing that they're Superman, thinking, I'm Superman. I'm Superman. I'm Spartacus. So Superman pulls the whole C. Clark just wishes he was Superman, like everyone else. Who are you gonna trust? Your pal Superman or your mind reading abilities that were accurate about absolutely everything else? Then Clark could have been daydreaming too. Well, I did get that award, only I wonder if I won it fairly. He won an award from stuff that he learned while he was mind reading, so no, he didn't win it fairly, but not for the reasons that Superman is implying. Who would believe that Superman is actually in cahoots with the citizens of Jupiter to stop Jimmy from learning his identity? That would make him sound insane, but it's the truth. That's exactly what happened. Also from the same issue, I'm gonna give a shout out to another story. The Super Nose for Truth by Otto Binder. This is a story where Professor Potter yeah, I know. He gives Jimmy some nasal spray to cure the common cold. Only whoops, it was his Pinocchio Legend spray. Now Jimmy's nose gets longer every time he lies. Lois decides to use him as a kind of human lie detector to try to figure out if Clark is Superman. So Superman once more has to hide his identity. You know, now that you think about it, the fact that everybody's trying to out him all the time is not surprising why he goes to some of these lengths. Just everything, all the relationships between everybody. It's a mess. As you can imagine, shenanigans ensue, including Jimmy not being able to get through doors. Stop hanging out with Professor Potter, Jimmy. Please. He does not listen. For the next issue 33, we have the Human Flamethrower, and we're back to our Otto Kurt Ray super team.
It's incredible, Superman. Jimmy's flame breath is 2,000 times more powerful than your X-ray vision. He can melt lead and you can't.
So Professor Potter is working on an invention for cold fire that's going to transform the cold fire from fireflies into actual fire. This in a gas form that he gives Jimmy to hold, and he drops it and inhales it. Breathes it all in. And it gives him the ability to breathe fire. Firstly, he nearly burns Perry White's face off while trying to light a cigar for him. Now, admittedly at first, Jimmy's abilities are coming across as kind of useful. That's until he burns the money that Superman gave him to deliver to a charity headquarters by accident, and it's $1,000 in 1958. So Jimmy needs to earn some money. So he does what he normally does in these situations, join a carnival. I really wish he was always the same one, and he just rolls up and goes, I have powers again, sign me back up. The only thing is this time, unlike being the Elastic Lad, Jimmy is too hot, literally. He's heating up the tent, people don't want to stay and they don't want to watch him. And so he falls in with criminals, only this time he's aware that they're criminals and they've made asbestos suits so he can't burn them. But Those suits will probably burn them years later. Jimmy also accidentally melted his signal watch, so he can't call Superman. Clearly there were no options left except to summon Superman via smoke signals going up a chimney. And you're not ready for what the antidote is. Remember the random dental gas blimp antidote? Well, this one, I hope you saw signs. That's right, some unsuspecting firefighters try to put Jimmy out, which cures him because the antidote was water. That means Jimmy drank no water this entire time. You need to stay hydrated for all these adventures, Jimmy. Next day at the office.
Back to normal, eh? Now buckle down for work or I'll fire you. Get it, Jimmy?
So being a flamethrower didn't really work out for Jimmy. He couldn't control it as well, it wasn't as much fun. But what about being a human octopus?
Jimmy's 6 hands are winning him prizes now, but he'll soon find out 6 hands can be a curse.
Superman has a terrible attitude about Jimmy's extra arms here in issue 41. This one comes to us from writer Robert Bernstein, art by Kurt Swan, inks John Forte. The year 1959. This one has a twist ending that still haunts me.
Great Scott, Jimmy, you've suddenly grown 6 arms. Will you do now?
Have myself a ball. You don't realize it, Superman? Having 6 arms gives a fella many advantages. For example, getting dressed in the morning is a cinch. Yes. Getting dressed. The only advantages of 6 hands. I do love the contrast of 1959 Olsen loving his extra arms and 1971 Spider-Man thinking they've completely ruined his life. This story opens when Superman shows up with a bunch of souvenirs for Jimmy from outer space. Jimmy didn't even go on this adventure, he just brought these back for him.
I've mounted each object with an inscription. After you write your exclusive story about the souvenirs, add them to your trophy collection.
Gosh, Superman, this is great. Thanks for thinking about me. The only thing is, one of these is a food. A space fruit, and Jimmy isn't paying attention while he's going through all this stuff, so he just takes a big old bite out of it. And Superman says that this space fruit causes specifically upper arm growth. They're very specific. They're like extra upper limbs, not lower, and nothing going on with legs or anything else. That night, Jimmy goes to sleep after watching a documentary about octopuses. Octopi. They're both right. They really are. And he wakes up with 4 extra arms. At first he panics and calls Superman, but he quickly gets into it.
Good grief, that space fruit took its effect.
Right? Now I'm the only 6-armed man on Earth. But do you know something? Just after I signaled you, it suddenly hit me that having 6 arms can be fun. Watch me do my morning push-up exercise. It's as easy as pie with 6 arms. I can do 100 push-ups a minute.
But human beings on our planet weren't intended to have 2 less arms than an octopus. 6 arms can be a handicap.
But as Jimmy demonstrates to the contrary, you call this a handicap? My hand's doing lots of things at the same time? Why, it's like having your power of super speed, Superman. This I like.
So I see.
Superman tells him he will rue the day. Rue it. But Jimmy is just loving this. He goes and gets a special suit made. He can work faster now because somehow his brain is just handling having these extra limbs, so he's typing on 3 typewriters. But then the union comes and tells Perry that that means that they have to pay Jimmy more. And as a result, Perry fires him. Seems about right. This time he does not go to a carnival, but he does go to try his hand at boxing, which there are no rules against it, but it puts him out of the weight class he tries to compete in. He's a big hit at the fair where he can win all kinds of prizes, but Lucy, who never needs any excuse to dump Jimmy, well, she's not into these arms. Look, honey, you'll get used to my 6 arms in no time. Think of it, now I can hug you with 6 arms.
Sorry, Jimmy. There's no sense in my seeing you anymore. If we got married and had children, who knows if they'd have 12 arms? Good luck and goodbye.
So Jimmy thinks maybe Superman was right and asks to take the arms away, which Superman does via antidote, and then the twist. The extra arms are gone.
Maybe you never had them, Jimmy. If you'd read this inscription, you'd have noted that eating this space fruit sometimes induces strange hallucinations. Maybe those extra arms existed only in your imagination.
That makes no sense. He went around, people saw him. Superman's first reaction was, oh look, the arms grew. Either way, both explanations are awful if you look at them from Superman's perspective. Either Jimmy was tripping out this whole time and Superman just let him wander around thinking he had these extra arms and interact with people just laughing at him the entire time, or he was just rolling around on the floor in some kind of haze, or he's lying to Jimmy about hallucinating because he's salty that Jimmy was enjoying his arms. Why are you like this, Silverade Superman? Why? This twist was not needed. I'll need another transformation to cleanse the palate. Thankfully, one is coming up next issue. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 42 gives us Jimmy the Genie. Same creative team, but now we're in 1960.
Genie Olsen, I order you to turn to living kryptonite and destroy Superman.
Yep, this one's gonna be special. Jimmy is on an adventure with Superman when they find a tomb, and among other souvenirs or curios or things they're just taking, they find a magic lamp. Superman goes off, and while Jimmy is photographing them, it's revealed that he has a toothache. Again, this never goes well for Jimmy. The Daily Planet has poor dental, confirmed. The lamp starts talking to him, telling him that it's Aladdin's lamp. So Jimmy makes a wish. Cure his toothache, and it works. And this genie has no rules about not being able to make people fall in love. Mind control ahoy. Fabulous, that's what it is, but now I'll really test your magic powers. Lucy Lane turned me down for a date last week. Can you change your mind?
as easily as I snap my fingers. Answer your phone, please.
Gross, but Jimmy never gets to reap those rewards because he says the word kill. And this was the magic word that switches Genie and Master. Just cause. Now Jimmy is the Genie, and the Genie is free to go full Jafar.
You threw away the chance of a lifetime, Olsen. You asked me for foolish things, a toothache cure, a banana split. But now that I'm your master, I'll get anything I want.
This Genie wants to rule the world. He has Jimmy build him a castle, and then he asks Jimmy for $1 million.
Abdul is beginning to frighten me. His ambitions know no bounds. With my supernatural powers at his command, the worst things can happen.
So Jimmy starts messing up the wishes, fulfilling them with little twists. And he doesn't call Superman because he doesn't want Superman to know that he messed with the lamp. As if Superman would be surprised by that at this point.
I command you to create an earthquake to crush the Fortress of Solitude and all the Superman robots inside.
I must obey him. Why, oh why did I ever rub that lamp?
I don't know, the same reason you rubbed that magic totem in that other issue. The former Genie has Jimmy turn to live in Kryptonite to kill Superman and then demands that he play him some movies. Here's where Jimmy manages to trick him because he puts them all up as choices and then has the Genie read them out. And one of them is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And you can't say that without saying the word kill, and that counts apparently. And so they switch back, and that's not a dead Superman, it's a dead Superman robot that was programmed for just such an occasion. And so they put the lamp in the Fortress of Solitude where it totally won't fall into the wrong hands, or at least not Jimmy's hands. Well, at least Jimmy got his tooth fixed, although he may instantly have started to undo that with that banana split. I don't know about the state of Jimmy's teeth. And I think he also, because of all this, stood Lucy up for that mind-controlled date that she was forced to accept. So that's good too. Now you may be thinking, Genie Olsen is great and all, but I want a more physical transformation. I want to see more body parts popping out of place or something. Well, Otto Binder and issue 44 have you covered. Art, Kurt Swan, of course. Inks, Stan K. It's time, for the Wolfman of Metropolis. We've done a full video on this story and the sequel from issue 52. That one was written by Jerry Siegel. Once more, Superman is leaving souvenirs to the Daily Planet, this time potions. Only one has anything left in it, and it's ye old Wolfman potion. So Jimmy drinks it with his lunchtime sandwich to prove that it doesn't work. It does, and Jimmy finds himself transforming into a Wolfman at night. The only cure, a kiss from a beautiful and willing maiden. I'm still disturbed that they had to put willing on the bottle itself. All of this led to...
Look, miss, all this money is yours if you'll just kiss me once. What up?
A classic. They cure this ailment because Superman gets Supergirl to kiss Jimmy, which she happily does because she likes Jimmy, but she's still in the whole I'm a secret and the world doesn't know about me phase because Clark doesn't want to tell people yet. So he has to go get her from the orphanage and then have them kiss in the dark. Strange vibes. The sequel is a Mr. Mxyzptlk plot. If you want more deets, be sure to check out the full video we did. Lots of Wolfman fun. The next one from issue 49 I was on the fence about including. This is because it's the issue where Jimmy is made fat, which is a recurring theme in the Silver Age. You'll just see that with multiple characters. It just didn't feel as transformy, but if it's good enough for the collection of Jimmy Olsen transformations, it's good enough for me. Also, they end up referencing this one later on when they flash back inside the Silver Age itself to Jimmy's other transformations, so they counted it. So again, good enough for me. On to the Fat Boy of Metropolis. This is one of those ones where it's written by question mark, but the art is by Kurt Swan, and the it's by John Forte, and we're still in 1960. You know, Superman's saying that he was promised his weight in jewels, but what type of jewels? That makes a difference. As you can imagine, this issue has a lot of fat jokes in it. But you know what's more shocking than that? Professor Potter has an assistant named Dr. Rance, and he's able to get Jimmy to drink this weight-enhancing formula by pretending that he gave it to him by accident. He's pretending he's bumbling and absent-minded, just like Professor Potter.
Heavens, Olsen, I've made a terrible mistake. I gave you a ball of the weight increaser. The professor keeps bottles of the formula lab icebox. I mistook them for soda pop.
Oh well, let's not worry about it, Rance. The professor worked up this fattening formula for animals only. I doubt if it will affect humans.
But I know it will, you fool. That's why I slipped the stuff to you to make you as fat as a hippo.
I've doubled my weight overnight. I'm busting out of my pajamas. I'd better empty that rain barrel and climb into it before I do a striptease on your lawn.
Some people would pay good money for that, and I wouldn't put it past Perry to put it on the front page either. Now, like many of these situations, Jimmy tries to make the best of it. He says the Maharaja is coming to give him his weight in jewels, and so now he'll get more. Once again, he goes and gets a special suit made. He's in the Santa costume with his all Perry hat that would fit him. And Jimmy again tries to go about his life, but he keeps encountering the fact that things aren't made for people of his weight. Parachutes, rescue ladders, starts to get a bit sad. He ends up being accused of trying to steal a job from the fat lady's husband at a carnival, which is of course when Lucy shows up.
Jimmy. It's obvious you're not even attracted to a carnival fat lady, let alone me.
Goodbye.
Anytime you want to just tell Jimmy that you don't like him at all is fine, Lucy. You don't need to play these games and make up all these reasons, all of these criteria that can't be reached, like I'll marry you and Superman marries Lois. It's just cruel. This is all a plot by Rance to try and get those jewels, but it's foiled and Jimmy goes back to normal, unchanged by his experience. I do like in these stories though when Jimmy has his faculties, he does try to make the best of these situations and have fun with them. This, like the octopus arms, was a case more of people around him being awful and not necessarily the transformation itself. So let's change that. For who could love a giant turtle man? Yes, 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 it's a new day, new clothes, time for Turtle Jimmy. The giant turtle man comes to us from issue 53, and this is another one we did a whole video on. It's an iconic transformation and even has a cover that's an homage to another sci-fi magazine. Turtle man Jimmy Olsen may have only technically happened once, but you will see him again a couple more times in the Silver Age. But it gets referenced a decent amount post-Crisis and beyond. It's just a very striking image. They give him such huge giant eyes. People have fun playing with it. This issue is from 1961, was written by Jerry Siegel. Art by, wait for it, Kurt Swan. And John Forte once more on inks. In this story, Jimmy finds a mysterious enlarging ray that ends up going off with the beam catching both him and a turtle in the beam, transforming Jimmy into a giant turtle man. It's nowhere near as grotesque as, say, the 1980s Fly. He sets about rampaging, and all of it ends up having ties to Superman's mermaid ex-girlfriend Lori Lamaris and a criminal from under the sea. It's not Jimmy's fault, not our precious Jimmy. It's a fun one, and once more, Jimmy doesn't fully remember what happened. The version in Emperor Joker where he gets bitten by a turtle and that transforms him, that one's a fun take on it as well. Not by a turtle, the turtle. The next transformation is almost a blink and you'll miss it type. It's coming to us from the story Jimmy Olsen, Freak, with an exclamation mark, so you gotta really hit it. A new writer enters the fray for this video, Leo Dorfman, with the ever-trusty Kurt Swan, and now we have George Klein on inks. The year, 1962. The issue 59. Superman, help me! These spacemen were jealous of my good looks, so they turned me into a human balloon. And they've given me ears like a mule.
Jimmy, this isn't what the Signal Watch is for. I mean, poor Jimmy. These characters have altered his body the way Red Kryptonite alters mine, but there's no hope that he'll ever change back to his normal form again.
That's a lie, and you know it. There is a literal line of suitors at Lucy's apartment, and she wants nothing to do with Jimmy and his mere 1 pound of chocolate. Who does he think he is? Did he not see how well dressed the line was? Jimmy is pining when suddenly a beautiful alien princess arrives, Ilona, and she wants to be with him. She loves his work covering the adventures of Superman. She even gives him a belt that gives him abilities, and it's made of gold. She proposes as well. I want to introduce you to all my friends at the Valentine's Day costume ball tonight, especially to that stuck-up Lucy Lane. She'll turn green with envy. I will come with you, of course, Jimmy dearest. Lucy and Jimmy have the worst relationship. Alone, I need about half an hour to stop by at my apartment and pack my clothes and Superman trophies. Then I'll meet you at the spaceship in the park.
I'll go ahead and prepare your cabin. Hurry, darling. I'll be counting every second until I see your face again.
No, don't let him bring his trophies. There's a Wolfman potion in there. Suddenly, a group of men show up and start altering his appearance, teasing him, messing with him. But Superman shows up and they know him, so they change Jimmy back. It turns out that they were jealous. They're Ilona's husbands, and they don't want a fifth husband. She did not talk to them about this, apparently.
But Jimmy, dearest, having several husbands is perfectly legal in my galaxy. You don't have to worry about the others. I promise you, you'll be my favorite.
That sounds just dandy. Could I have a private word with Superman? Save me, Superman.
And I'll whisper, no.
You know, the way she's talking, this is the reason why they showed up and tried to turn him into a balloon in the first place. They know how vain she is. She's very vain. Only hot people in the harem. Jimmy gets out of this, not by faking his death, which some of you suggested in the community tab when I posted this, but by pretending that he's also married to multiple people, 2 women. Ilona's objection is not this marriage. She was gonna take them with her, but this fact that they're old and ugly, her words. And that means that Jimmy has no taste, and she can't be with someone who has no taste. If they were young and hot, that would have been something else, but they're not, so you know what? Ilona and husband's out. No, Superman didn't get real old ladies. He got either a narration box error, because it says he got Lois and Lana, but that's clearly Lucy and not Lana. Or rather, it's blonde-haired Lana based on the hair length, so probably a coloring error. And so Jimmy tries to use this to have some temporary clout with Lucy. This transformation is barely a thing, and it could have been cut entirely. It's mostly there because they put something zany like that on the cover and it had to be in the book somehow. Because they could have just shown up and confronted him. It really didn't need to involve him turning into a balloon. Disappointing. Entertaining though. But after that, we need some classic style transformation, which we get in issue 65. This with the Human Porcupine, written by Jerry Siegel with the same art team as last issue. Oops, one of my quills hit Lucy Lane's hat. Help me, Superman. Oh no, not her hat. The tragedy.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. This time you're the victim of a magic spell, which even I can't undo.
Superman does not care. Oh no, Jimmy, you don't fool me. You can't trick me into saying my name backwards. I'll remove the porcupine spell only after you marry me. The teaser page is not lying. That is the plot. Mixie's girl wants to marry Jimmy because Mix keeps rejecting her because he feels she's ugly. The thing is, Jimmy wants nothing to do with her either because he feels that she's homely. Jimmy only accepts babes unless they already have 4 husbands. After rejecting her and she's seemingly gone, Jimmy tells Superman that he'd rather marry an animal than her. She overhears this and is understandably upset. So, you'd rather marry an animal, eh? My 5th dimensional magic will give you a fate you deserve. Zippity rack, I command you to walk through the zoo. You'll resemble the first animal you meet. No! Now, despite this, Jimmy still tries to find a way to make the best of this. I know, I'll approach that proud, magnificent lion. If I become a tough, powerful lion boy, the gals will lionize me. But disastrously, a porcupine. Now I just want to read the issue where Superman turns into a lion again. We did a whole video on that as well. After transforming, Jimmy for some reason tries to approach Lucy. I don't know why. She wouldn't accept him if he had less than a pound of chocolate. Why would she accept him as a human porcupine? She didn't want the extra arms either. Although maybe that didn't happen. Jimmy also references the time that he was a Wolfman in this issue, but says that this is worse. And so begins Jimmy trying to trick our imp into saying her name backwards, and having to get a job at the carnival. This is where he manages to succeed with his trickery, by getting a giant tattoo on his chest saying that he loves her but with her name backwards. And so she reads it backwards, which means she has to go back to her dimension for at least 90 days. It's not a permanent tattoo. I wish it was, and that he just kept crossing names out on it. And so we get an all laugh at the end ending, where Superman teases him that in the next cage over from the porcupine was a skunk. It could have been worse. Now, oftentimes when discussing older comics or older media in general, there can be a perception that people of the time weren't in on the joke, or that they weren't aware of how some of the tropes were playing out, or that some things were perhaps sillier than others. This, of course, was not the case. Some were enjoying what was there, some found it silly, some found it bad, a variety of reactions, just like modern media. And as a result, this means that some things were poked fun at, or at least lampshaded in a way, or acknowledged in some way. Such is the case with Jimmy Olsen's transformations. We start to have stories playing with the fact that he's transformed so many times. This can be seen in the World of Doomed Olsens from issue 72. Same creative team as last time, but now it's 1963. Elastic lad figure of me is tickling me. Can't stop laughing. One of the quills from the porcupine Olsen jabbed me. Now I'm in pain. Please help me, Superman.
I can't, Jimmy. This is your punishment for all eternity, to be tormented by your former identities.
Now, it must be noted that Jimmy is famous in the Superman mythos at this point, in canon, in universe. This because of all of his adventures with Superman. He has a fan club, he has ladies trying to marry him from other dimensions and planets, and he also gets to have guest appearances on the radio and TV. Here he is demonstrating some of his transformations, like becoming Elastic Lad or a Wolfman. Now you see me as a giant turtle man. It happened when a villain's growth rate transferred most of the turtle's characteristics to me. Next, I'll tell you about the time I was Fat Boy. No. Drinking the serums is one thing, but you don't get to come on the TV and put on essentially a slideshow. But they don't have to go through the rest of Jimmy's slides because he's suddenly abducted by the Collector. This Collector says that he's committed a heinous crime, and he takes him to another planet and starts to manifest other Jimmys and try and get them to torment him. The giant turtle man avoided stepping on you purposefully, Jimmy. This is a regular zoo. He's a turtle and you're a chicken.
Stop stuffing your face like a pig, Fat Boy. Why don't you do something worthwhile, like taunting Olsen?
Look, fellas, why don't you gang up against this alien character and help me? And after all, if it weren't for me, none of you would even exist. I don't mean to insult you, but you're all freakish imitations of me. The original freak, the OG. This is where the Collector roots them all to the spot. At this point, Jimmy remembers, don't I have a signal watch? And he uses it to call Superman.
Sorry, Jimmy, much as I'd like to save you, I can't. If I interfere with the Collector with his super science, he can destroy the entire Earth. I can't let billions die to rescue just one person.
Joke. That's true. Yes, I know you're not supposed to say the choke, but I like to. It brings me joy. So how does Jimmy get out of this one? Well, it turns out it was just a prank, bro. This isn't a vengeful alien, and none of these are actually alternate Jimmys. It's the Legion of Superheroes. They've all dressed up as different versions of Jimmy, using their powers to pick which one they were. Why? Because this is hazing. This is a hazing ritual. Jimmy is about to be inducted into the Legion of Superheroes as an honorary member. Welcome to the Legion. Is it too late not to join? This would make me not want to join. So it was Colossal Boy who played giant turtle man Jimmy Olsen. And our next tale, the tables will have turned, for it's Jimmy who will be the Colossus. This in 77's The Colossus of Metropolis.
Lindsay, you've kept me dangling on a string for years. Now it's my turn. I could give you the brush off with a mere twitch of my finger.
Superman, save me! Oh, Lucy and Jimmy, so healthy. Take it away, question mark. With art by Swan and Klein, let's do it. We open on Jimmy being gifted a vault for his souvenirs by Superman that's gonna go in his apartment. Really, I think this gift is for Superman himself. It's giving him the gift of security. But he should know by now that no vault can protect him or the world from Jimmy's antics. This shelf is for my super chemicals. Lori the mermaid gave me that solution which enables me to live underwater for 24 hours. Colossal Boy gave me the compound which can turn me into a giant. And the elastic fluid changes me into Elastic Lad. He can just breathe underwater. He doesn't grow a tail. Doesn't count. I feel like that should go in the Jimmy Gets Powers video, which could be an entirely different video, and lots of things ended up there for maybe later. Like Jimmy gets the Midas touch. Jimmy is Ultra Olsen. Another one is Jimmy dresses up and those clothes do things to him. It's an exciting time to be Jimmy Olsen. My girlfriends, Allura, the beautiful giantess from a distant planet. Ilona, the Sunev galaxy. Rona, that luscious doll from another dimension. They're all mad about me. Ilona dumped you hard. She is not your girlfriend. Don't revise history. I'm sure she found a fifth husband somewhere else. Jimmy drinks the enlarging serum in this to take on Titano because Superman has a hard time dealing with him because of his kryptonite vision. He does pull the stunt on the cover, but it's as a joke. It's not one of the more substantive transformations, but I felt it should be on here because he gets so colossal. We need to take it up a notch with issue 80. Here we have the Bizarro Boy. It's 1964 and Jimmy's becoming a Bizarro. Jerry Siegel wrote this one, but this time it's not Kurt Swan on pencils. No, now it's John Forte and Klein is the inker. 1964 trying to mess me up. The cover calls this story the Bizarro Jimmy Olsen, which is more accurate than just a generic boy. Some high school girls are at the planet seeking autographs from Lois and Jimmy, because they're reporters for their school paper and they just idolize the people at the Daily Planet. And also they think that Jimmy is very handsome. But when Jimmy shows up, he has a Bizarro face mask on. He's wearing it as a joke. It's part of an elaborate prank that he's planning for Professor Potter. No, Jimmy, I thought you learned your lesson. I thought we didn't hang out with him anymore. Not since he hired a jewel smuggler. For weeks, Professor Potter, the zany inventor, has been working on a normalizer ray to turn the Bizarro people human. His ideas always flop, but I'll pretend he succeeded this time. I'll play my Bizarro Jimmy Olsen gag on him now. I mean, do his ideas really flop? They all kind of work. It's just that they end up causing mayhem for Jimmy. If I succeed in turning the Bizarros human, I'll win the Nobel Prize in Physics. It's Jimmy that entirely messes this up because when he comes in, Professor Potter thinks that it's Bizarro Jimmy from the world of Bizarros and tries to cure him. But because Jimmy is already normal, the machine turns him into a Bizarro, and it starts to affect Jimmy. Like he starts reporting on normal everyday happenings as if they're front page scoops. And because he was wearing the mask earlier, everybody thinks he's just pulling this elaborate prank for a long time and they just kind of roll with it but say he should stop. It's only when Superman X-rays Jimmy that he realizes, oh, he actually is a Bizarro.
Unfortunately, I have to leave town on a vital mission. I hope he keeps out of trouble.
You know he won't. Why are you just gonna let Bizarro Jimmy wander around? Jimmy goes around being a Bizarro and actual Bizarro shows up and takes him to Bizarro World. They feel that he belongs there and he can replace the Jimmy of that world.
Sorry, original Bizarro Jimmy.
And at the Daily Planet, they hold a light little funeral for Jimmy. They even have a wreath and everything. Poor Jimmy, doomed to spend his life in the Bizarro world among those pathetic non-human creatures. Oh, never see Jimmy again. I realize now how much I care for him. Why is Lana here? But alas, Jimmy can't fit in on the Bizarro world. He keeps viewing things through the lens of his original home, and that makes him make poor decisions based on Bizarro logic. And when he's exposed to blue kryptonite, instead of hurting him, it actually helps him regain his faculties. So now he's fully aware that he's trapped on Bizarro world. Most of this issue is dedicated to showing just how topsy-turvy everything is. Though there is a pretty funny sequence where he's about to marry Bizarro Lucy, where he says, I do instead of I don't. That's wrong, Jimmy. You're supposed to say I don't in Bizarro marriage. Why, you must be freak Bizarro with Earth Mind.
That mean you am insane. Come along, buddy.
Jimmy finally solves this by making a Bizarro Professor Potter who makes a ray that turns him human again. Professor Potter, the original, forgot his equation, so he couldn't reverse the process. Or maybe he just didn't appreciate Jimmy pranking him. No one's putting that much effort into saving Jimmy. Maybe they're all burnt out. And it's like, Jimmy's transformed again. It usually works itself out. Trapped on Another Planet was a high benchmark. That one was 2 parts. It's one that felt like it had a lot of love behind it and there was some fun had with it. It doesn't feel like more of a filler story as some of them can. The Adventures of Chameleon Head Jimmy Olsen has that vibe a little bit, though it also has the most transforming for your 12 cents. This one's from 1965. We have the same creatives in play. The issue 85. Is it a fat head? Is it a bubble head? Is it a double header? No, dear reader, the hilarious yet exciting tale you are about to read concerns reporter Jimmy Olsen. But this is a brand new Jimmy Olsen you've never seen before. You'll laugh, you'll howl as you enjoy the adventures of Chameleon Head Olsen. I only howl if Jimmy is turning into a Wolfman. Now, despite knowing Jimmy, so knowing this is a terrible idea, Chameleon Boy from the Legion gives him a serum that will allow him to have his powers for a temporary period of time. They don't say how much, just temporarily. Jimmy ends up having to use this as soon as he gets home because he's held up at gunpoint. Only when he drinks it, his whole body doesn't change, but just his head. So the whole issue, he has to get creative with coming up with different heads to save himself from all these people who are trying to get him, because there's a bounty that's been placed upon him by the Anti-Superman League. Sorry, the Anti-Superman gang. They're not a league, just a gang. This one is pretty creative with solutions to problems, like when one of them tries to put Black Widows on him, he turns his head partially into an anteater's. At one point, he gives himself giant mammoth tusks so he can attack some others while saying, "Get the point?" I mean, it did say that we would laugh, potentially howl. Eventually, he does get captured, though. Nothing can save you, Olsen. Superman is away in outer space. Only he could save you. Only Superman could save me. Only... Superman. Certain death is making you flip your lid, huh? Okay, I'll pull the trigger and put you out of your misery. Does Superman announce publicly when he's going to space? He should really stop doing that. But Jimmy turns his face into Superman's face. And the gang believes he must be Superman, so they flee. And while the power wears off as Superman gets there, Jimmy thinks he had a good time and some experiences he'll laugh about for years to come. So will we, Jimmy. So will we. So we come to our last transformations for this video. The World of 1,000 Olsens. This is from Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen 105. Autobender is back, this time with art by Pete Costanza. And 105 puts us at 1967. Superman, help me fight off these weirdy doubles of myself. They all want to kill me.
How do I know you're the real Jimmy? Maybe you're as phony as this Elastic Olsen.
He gave that Elastic Olsen quite the punch. Superman's attitude throughout so much of this has just been so tired of dealing with Jimmy. So very tired. Jimmy is at an observatory where an astronomer wants to name an asteroid after him. Before he can figure out why, the scientist is killed right in front of him. I'm sorry, disintegrated. Commerce Code approved. Jimmy tries to figure it out and he sees that the asteroid is full of Jimmys. An entire world of Jimmys. There's a slang there, but I'm putting it way at the back of my mind. Then a craft shows up to take him there, so he goes, but when he arrives, everyone wants to kill him. Until he's saved by some different Jimmys who are on his side. Suffering cats, 2 heads of me and one of Superman carved on the mountain like the presidents on Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. But this place doesn't just have average Jimmys and female Jimmys, it also has transformed Jimmys. Any chance to draw that giant turtle, I approve. Yes. Holy hat, a girl, and she looks like me too. What's more, she has Superman's insignia on her badge. Jimmy gets thrown in jail when he claims he's Superman's pal, and there he encounters even more transformed versions of himself. Oh no, it's angry Human Octopus Jimmy. But look at how good he is at assembling furniture. I'm telling you, Superman was jealous. Jimmy was gonna live his best life with those arms. Jimmy escapes, and it turns out this is all the work of Tempest, a villain who had appeared prior. We're early in the era of continuity, but it's firming up. What's funny is that this second Tempest appearance is not counted on certain wikis and the like. It's been forgotten. Tempest just fell into the memory hole. When you hear his plan, it may make sense why. He has made a world of Jimmy androids because last time he tried to conquer the world, Jimmy stopped him. So now he'll conquer Earth with a world of Jimmys. But why did he make good Jimmys as well as bad Jimmys? Well, he said that he had to balance the world out because it had to be perfectly balanced like a well-working clock. Boo, bring on the clock king. Jimmy incites a brawl between good and bad Jimmys, and a robot Superman shows up who is way too eager to punch an Olsen bot. You're the phony, mister. The fake android Superman, they honor on this. Ugh.
Shut up! See, one punch and he's tagged out.
Real Superman shows up and freezes all those Olsens. Guess we don't need to think about the fact that they were a society and it wasn't their. You know what? We're just gonna leave it alone. A lot happened here. This one may need its own video. It was a fun way to incorporate those Jimmy Olsen transformations though, and a different way. Jimmy turning into things. It happened a fair bit. Enough to leave an impression, that's for sure. Perhaps a bigger impression than the amount of times he actually transformed. For as often as it did occur, and there is some repetition, there is less than some may anticipate. You have some of the core themes going through each time though, like Jimmy's doing this because of his own ignorance, or by accident. But they managed to keep the story surrounding these incidents fairly unique. Although of course, when you have this many issues, you're gonna run into some things again. And some of those can kind of become running gags in a way, like Jimmy running off to the carnival. Now, Jimmy transforming may seem very silly, and in many ways it is, but it's also a clever way to have Jimmy get out there and have his own adventures that have him more as the focal point and place Superman more into the background. Jimmy is the protagonist of these stories. He's the focus and his popularity was built out. Of course, he wouldn't have any of that without Superman, and there was and always would be a tie to the Man of Steel, and one can see that without nurturing, Jimmy's popularity fades. But these stories are part of establishing Jimmy as a firm and important part of Superman's supporting cast, and they even let him stand on his own for a little bit. Own-ish. The TV show also helped at the start to boost Jimmy. It was where the idea to do a comic series came from, seeing the popularity of the character on that show. The stories may not be all the most serious, but the idea of selling Jimmy as a character is taken very seriously. And they do still try and adhere to their own internal logic and kind of wrap themselves up in ways that make sense, most of the time Human Octopus. Series like this one, or Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, show that you can really build up some of these side characters if you take the time and sometimes take the risks. And that sometimes what really works for these characters is placing them in a slightly different situation than the main books. Jimmy's is more a wacky slice of life off-time sci-fi adventure, and Lois's veers a lot more towards romance in the sci-fi. Though of course mileage is going to vary. Some are going to find these silly throwaway stories best forgotten, let's not go back to the Silver Age, or utilize it only for comedic references. Others won't dive in too deeply and will just look at some of the surface things that come up with some of the great covers or some of the panels that get saved. Now when these Jimmy references do show up, they tend to be loving. Even if you're getting a more serious payoff at the end, like in something like The Nail. Jimmy Olsen is the payoff and that is so good. Matt Fraction had an entire throwback series, Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, Who Killed Jimmy Olsen. That series managed to channel the love of these type of adventures into it. And not just the transforming, a bunch of different ones. That series reads a lot stronger if you do have some of the background knowledge about Jimmy's own series, but it's still fun even if one doesn't. There aren't too many collections of Jimmy. Transforming Jimmy is one though. And now I want to hear from you. What was your favorite Transforming Jimmy? Your least? Do you feel like I missed any or some should have been here that weren't? You know I'm always thrilled to talk about Jimmy. This was a long one. It was a labor of love. So please, if you enjoyed it, give it some love. Share it around, give it a like, leave a comment. The more engagement, the more we can do fun stuff like this in the future. I love doing the long form random retrospectives. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I will see you again soon. Please do all those YouTube things and we'll be back with more videos here on Casually Comics. Bye bye.